This is the U-2 spy plane, a black shape on a runway at a base nobody will name. The same jet the Air Force has been flying since 1956. Watch closely. Two wheels drop off the airplane, bounce down the runway behind it, and nobody on the ground even flinches, because it's supposed to. Everything this machine does looks broken and works perfectly. In 20 minutes, it climbs past 95% of the atmosphere, and the Pentagon has spent decades and billions of dollars trying to replace it. Every attempt has failed. The U-2 Dragon Lady climbs so fast, it leaves fighter jets gasping in the thin air far below. Passing 50,000 feet, the sky starts to darken. Passing 60,000, the engine has a problem. The air it breathes is disappearing. A jet engine is an air pump, and thin air gives it almost nothing to work with. The U-2 carries exactly one, a General Electric F118, from the same family that powers the B-2 stealth bomber. At sea level, it puts out 17,000 pounds of thrust. Up here, a fraction of that. The margin for getting anything wrong shrinks with every foot of climb. One engine, one pilot, a few hundred miles of empty sky in every direction. If it quits, there's no spare to lean on. There's a long, quiet glide and a lot of math. The good news, and this is where the design gets clever, is that a glider with a jet engine makes a spectacular glider without one. From this height, the U-2 can stretch a dead stick glide over 200 miles, which buys the pilot a lot of time to think, troubleshoot, and pick a runway. Because that's what this airplane is. Look at the wings. 105 feet tip to tip, on an airframe that weighs about 40,000 pounds loaded. A passenger jet packs heavy weight onto a small wing. The U-2 does the exact opposite. It's basically a glider, one that somebody bolted an engine onto. Air too thin to hold anything else will still hold this. Where every other jet runs out of sky, the Dragon Lady keeps climbing. The engine isn't the only thing the pilot's babysitting on the way up. Fuel rides in 4 tanks spread through those long wings. 2,915 gallons of JPTS. It's a special blend cooked up for just this airplane, because the ordinary stuff misbehaves at the temperatures up there. It also has to stay balanced as it burns. Interrupt the shuttling and the trim slowly walks away from him. Too much in the left wing and the plane flies tilted. Too much in the right and the same problem mirrors itself. So he shuttles fuel between tanks all mission long, trimming a 105-foot teeter-totter with a pump switch. One thing the pilot never worries about is weather. Thunderstorms that ground every airliner on the seaboard top out at 40,000 feet below him. The jet stream, the turbulence, the icing layers, all of it stays in the basement. The U-2 cruises in air so still that the biggest disturbance for hours is the plane's own wake. Weather is for everybody else. By 70,000 feet, the sky above the canopy is black, not dark blue, black. Stars come out in the middle of the afternoon, and the curve of the Earth bends away below the cockpit. It's the same view the astronauts get out of an airplane designed before the moon landing. And that view comes with a catch, because the pilot's next problem is his own body. Inside, the cabin air stays about as thin as the top of Mount Everest. That puts him one bad seal away from what happens to a scuba diver who surfaces too fast. Dissolved gases fizzing out of him like a shaken soda. The bends. It's an airplane, and there's no surfacing slowly from 70,000 feet. That suit is a David Clark S-1034, $250,000 worth of personal spacecraft, built by the people who suited the Gemini astronauts. It also explains the strange ritual that happened back on the ground. Before engine start, the pilot sat for a full hour breathing pure oxygen, clearing the nitrogen out of his system so there'd be nothing left to fizz. Same thing NASA does ahead of a spacewalk. 60 minutes on the mast, suited up and waiting, engine not even running. Skip that ritual and the altitude can cripple him from the inside without a single thing going wrong with the airplane. So he sits sealed in his own little atmosphere, climbing through air that can't support life in a machine built to live where nothing else flies. The Dragon Lady levels off 13 miles up, and the moment it does, the trap closes. A pocket of turbulence nudges the jet. The airspeed needle twitches toward the slow side, and the airframe shudders under him. His hand moves on the throttle before his brain catches up. That shudder is the airplane warning him it's about to stop flying. Fly a wing too slow and it quits making lift. It stalls and the airplane falls. Down low, that's no problem because there's a big gap between too slow and too fast, and you just cruise in the middle. Up here, the gap is nearly gone. Here's the trap. The thinner the air, the faster the wing has to move just to stay up. The climb that carried him to 70,000 feet was also shoving the too slow limit higher and higher, straight toward the too fast one. That's the speed where the air starts ripping at the airframe. Two edges, closing in on each other all the way up. At cruise altitude, the gap between them is only 5 knots. 5 knots is the difference between a brisk walk and a slow jog. One side of that window, the wing quits and the plane drops out of the stratosphere. The other side, the airframe starts coming apart. Pilots have a name for this sliver of survivable air: the coffin corner. The U-2 doesn't pass through the coffin corner, it lives there. A typical mission runs 10 to 12 hours, and some push past 14. That's a full workday balanced on a 5-knot wire at the edge of space. There's an autopilot with a speed hold, and it helps. He watches it like a hawk anyway, because up here, the machine gets no benefit of the doubt. There's no co-pilot to spell him and no place to pull over. But here is where it gets mean. The corner refuses to sit still. As the day grinds on, the engine burns off fuel and the plane gets lighter. Lighter means the wing needs less speed, which moves both edges of the window and forces the pilot to keep nudging his own to stay inside it. The needle drifts the entire mission, and he drifts with it, hour after hour, never letting it slip past either edge. Riding that wire is a constant, tiny negotiation with the throttle. Too much power and the jet surges forward to the fast edge, where the airframe starts to complain. Too little and the shudder comes creeping back through the stick. The corrections are small, steady, and endless, the way you'd balance a broom on your palm for half a day. There's a reason these pilots describe the job as hand-flying a knife edge while wearing oven mitts. The working conditions make the wire meaner. The pilot's suit stiffens up the higher he goes, and pilots compare flying in it to wearing a full body cast. The gloves are about as precise as winter mittens. Every button push becomes a deliberate two-handed effort, and the helmet's basically its own little spaceship. It feeds him oxygen, pulls out the moisture, and seals tight enough to keep him alive if the cabin ever blows. It also boxes in his vision and muffles the world down to the hiss of his own breathing. If he gets hungry, the only option is pureed food squeezed through a port in the helmet. Applesauce, mashed potatoes, the kind of thing you'd feed a toddler. Most of them don't even bother trying. They come back from a long mission 5 to 7 pounds lighter, wrung out, dried up, and fried. By hour 9, the wire gets personal. His hips ache against the seat. His eyes burn from staring at the same needle. The sun crawls across the sky at a pace that feels personal too. There's no stretching in a cockpit about as roomy as a phone booth. No standing, no relief beyond shifting an inch and going back to work. Holding a 5-knot window takes the same focus at hour 11 that it took at hour 1. Get it wrong that late in the day and there's nobody up there to catch him. The coffin corner doesn't care how tired he is. No wonder only about 80 of them qualify at any given moment, all flying for the 9th Reconnaissance Wing out of Beale Air Force Base in California. Getting in is harder than making fighter pilot, harder than even test pilot school. Just being a great stick isn't enough. A candidate has to hold that needle, alone, for 12 hours while his body wears down inside a spacesuit. The ones who make it join one of the smallest and strangest fraternities in military aviation. 12 hours on a 5-knot wire, and every one of them is the entire point, because somewhere below, something is about to move that shouldn't. A convoy starts rolling where it has no business being. 13 miles up, the pilot watching the live feed sees it the instant it happens and swings the cameras onto it before it reaches the next ridge. That instant is the whole game. Run the same convoy past the alternatives and watch them lose. A spy satellite would have missed it. Satellites run on orbits anyone with a laptop can predict to the minute. That convoy crew on the ground rolls the launcher into a tunnel, throws a net over the site, and waits the 15 minutes for it to pass. That crew below has run this drill 100 times. They know the satellite schedule by heart and time the move for the gap when the sky is empty. What they don't know is that the empty sky has been watching them for hours. A drone would have been late to it. The camera is real enough, but the human aiming it sits in a trailer half a world away, watching the feed run a few seconds behind through a satellite link. Then he sends orders back up the same pipe. Add all that delay and it's minutes. In this business, minutes is forever. By the time the drone swings over, the convoy's under the trees. The U-2 pilot caught it because there's no link and no lag. He sees it the instant it happens and swings the cameras over himself, right now. There's no jamming a decision that happens inside a cockpit, no hacking it, and no feeding it a fake picture from the ground. A human brain above the weather and the politics, watching live, choosing where to look next. 70 years of fancier technology still hasn't cracked it. The convoy is only the start. Once the cameras lock on, the U-2 stays with the target for as long as the fuel holds. It watches the truck stop, sees what gets unloaded, and follows where the drivers go next. A satellite would have brought home a single still frame. The pilot overhead is building the whole story, end to end, in one unbroken stare. This is where the altitude pays for itself. Star of the show is the Sires 2, an optical camera roughly the length of a canoe. It catches a row of trucks in a parking lot from 13 miles up and counts them. A single pass photographs an area the size of Western Europe. The ASAR's radar punches through cloud and total darkness. Plus, there's gear that sits up there quietly, scooping up enemy radio chatter and radar signals from 200 miles away. Here's the clever part. Think of it as a 40,000-pound camera body with interchangeable lenses. Between missions, the crew pulls one sensor set off and bolts another on. So the airframe that mapped a coastline on Monday is listening to enemy radio traffic by Thursday. One plane, a dozen jobs, whatever the Pentagon needs to know that week. The take doesn't wait for the jet to come home. Much of what the sensors collect streams off the aircraft in flight, down to analysts who pick it apart while the pilot's still on station. A convoy spotted at noon can be on a briefing slide before he starts his descent. The plane keeps watching while the ground keeps reading. The whole machine runs in real time. There's one more problem the cameras solve, and it's a political one. The pilot just can't wander across someone's border to get the shot. One stray mile and a reconnaissance flight becomes an international incident, so he doesn't cross it at all. From 70,000 feet, the sensors stare sideways across a huge slice of ground, peering deep into the enemy land the plane never actually flies over. It sees over a border without the airplane ever crossing it. The geometry of that stare is its own balancing act. Too close to the line and the diplomats spend a week cleaning up after the flight. Too far back and the cameras run out of reach. So mission planners thread the racetrack pattern along the edge, close enough to see everything, but far enough to touch nothing. The pilot flies the same long oval for hours while the sensors do the trespassing for him. The other side can see the plane the whole time, a blip on radar flying a lazy oval just outside the border. What they can't see is where the cameras are pointed, or that everything inside their territory is already on a screen in another country. Where it stares is the part nobody will tell you. U-2s get tracked slipping out of forward bases with their transponders dark, not showing up on any public flight tracker, gone the moment they climb. The budget line that funds them runs in the classified pages, the dollar figures blacked out. The U-2 is so rarely seen in the open that when one showed up at an air show last year, that by itself made the news. Even the public sightings only tell you it left one place and turned up at another. A tail number crosses a coastline at 60,000 feet and the spotters log it. Then it's gone again, with no word on what it was looking at or who asked for the flight. A handful of U-2s rotate through forward air bases around the globe, and analysts read the pattern of where they land like tea leaves. Hour after hour, the stare goes on. The pilot rides the corner, chases the needle, watches the feed. Then the fuel gauges start asking a hard question. 12 hours up, and those 4 wing tanks are running toward empty. Now comes the part U-2 pilots say is harder than anything over the target. The airplane has to come home, and this airplane doesn't want to land. Coming down is its own slow project. The U-2 descends the way it does everything, reluctantly, and shedding 13 miles of altitude takes the better part of an hour. The pilot rides the speed limits down through thickening air, the window between the edges widening with every 1,000 feet. For the first time all day, the pilot has room to breathe. Then the runway comes into view, and the day's last problem starts. The same wings that kept him alive at 70,000 feet now refuse to quit flying. Coming into land, the thing just hangs there, floating, eating up concrete while the pilot waits for the wings to give up. That glider design cuts both ways. Too much lift and it won't settle. Too little weight and it won't sink. The wing that holds the plane up in air too thin for anything else holds it up just as stubbornly in the thick air over the runway. Perfect at the edge of space. A nightmare 3 feet off the ground. The only way down is to make the wings quit on purpose. The pilot flies the approach right to the edge of the stall, then holds the plane a couple of feet off the concrete until the lift gives out. Too fast and it floats past half the runway before it ever touches. Too slow and it drops those last feet like a piano. The technique is to stall it onto the ground, deliberately every single time, which is kind of the thing the flight instructors spend entire careers teaching students never to do. And while the pilot fights the float, the second problem waits under the fuselage. The U-2 doesn't come down on 3 legs like everything else in the sky. It lands on 2. Not 2 big ones and a little nose tire. Just a pair in a single line, one behind the other, like a bicycle. Nothing out of the wingtips to stop a tip over. The only thing holding those 105-foot wings level is forward speed and the pilot's hands. Let one wing sag and the tip digs in. On a plane this delicate, it can spin the whole thing right off the runway. Then comes the third problem, and it's the worst one. The U-2 lands nose high, head up like it's sniffing the air, and the pilot is sealed inside a helmet that turns his side vision into a paper towel tube. The last moments before touchdown, the guy flying the plane literally can't see the runway in front of him. 12 hours of holding a 5-knot wire, and the flight ends with a blind landing on a bicycle. The Air Force has spent 70 years trying to engineer this problem away, and the best answer anyone ever found wasn't a sensor or a screen. It was a car. A muscle car redlines down the runway behind the descending jet, engine wide open, closing at 120 miles an hour. A voice on the radio counting the plane down. 10 feet. 5, 3, 2, 1. The driver isn't a mechanic or a ground controller. He's another fully qualified U-2 pilot, because nobody else on Earth knows what this airplane feels like in the last 6 seconds of a flight. Over the years, the squadron has used Camaros, Mustangs, and Pontiac GTOs for the job. They burn through brake pads and rear tires at a rate the motor pool has learned to live with. The rule is basically this: buy something American that does 140 miles an hour and put a trained pilot behind the wheel. So the pilot lands the U-2 by voice. Miss a call by half a second, and the airplane drops the last few feet on its own terms. The chase pilot calls the numbers while the one in the cockpit eases off the last of the speed until the lift lets go. Down it comes, settling the final couple of feet onto the concrete. A 70,000-foot mission ends with 2 humans, 1 radio, and a Detroit muscle car. The rollout is its own balancing act. Wings held level on 2 wheels at highway speed. The plane slows, and the lift finally quits. One side dips, and the dip scrapes the runway in a shower of sparks. But that's not a crash. See that strip of metal out there? Titanium skid, bolted on for exactly this moment, doing its only job. Once the wing stops flying, nothing holds that side up. The engineers knew it from the start. Just reinforce the tip and let it drag, and the wing survives the landing. Skip the skid and the tip tears itself apart on the concrete. So they armored it and accepted the sparks. Every landing, every time. Even stopped, the airplane isn't done being strange. It sits there leaning on one wingtip like a bicycle against a wall, because with 2 wheels in a line, leaning is all it can do. The crew swarms it on the runway. Nobody panics and no one hurries. For this crew, it's just Tuesday. And those 2 wheels that fell on takeoff, those are called pogos, and now they finally make sense. They ride in sockets out near the wingtips, held on by gravity alone. No latches, no pins, nothing. The attachment system is about as sophisticated as a broomstick in a bucket. They prop the wings up for taxi, then drop the second the airplane can hold itself up. After landing, the crew, the same airmen who chased them down at takeoff, walks them back out of the grass and bolts them on by hand. It's a cheap fix for an ugly problem. Building real fold-up wheels would mean motors, hydraulics, and extra pounds. And pounds are the one thing this airplane can't spare. Too heavy and it never reaches altitude. Too complex and it never stays reliable. So the engineers shrugged and went with wheels that fall off and a crew that picks them up. It's crude, reliable, and perfectly U-2. No instrument landing system does any of this. No camera feed, no autopilot mode. A guy in a car talking another guy onto the ground. In 2026, the most expensive airplane on the flight line, brought home like a kite on a string. 70 years of avionics progress, and the safest way to land is still a trained human shouting numbers through a radio. The canopy cracks open, and out climbs the man in the spacesuit. 12 hours older, 5 pounds lighter, moving like his joints forgot how. Around him, the crew is already bolting the pogos back on, and the chase car is topping off its tank for tomorrow. And locked inside those sensors is something nobody outside a vault will ever get to see. It came back from a place the Air Force won't confirm, aboard an airplane that shouldn't still exist. If you enjoyed this video, then watch this video on the world's most powerful bomber that can hit any target, anywhere, and no one can stop it. Bye for now.